Okay, everybody, today's video is about mistakes and feedback for speaking specifically, well, rather about mistakes and feedback, how to give students feedback regarding their mistakes. And there are differences depending upon the types of speaking activities. So this can help us as we continue to work with speaking in our schools and for your future practice and professional experiences. So here, just first to understand why our students are making mistakes, Harmer divides mistakes into three different categories. The first kind are called slips, and these are the mistakes that students make, but they're able to correct themselves. So the student says, yesterday I goed to the supermarket, I went. And then a second type of mistake is an error, and these are mistakes that students cannot fix themselves and they need an explanation. So, if we could use that same example, but when the student doesn't know the actual answer, then it's really an error and we need to explain to them so that they know for the future how to correct it. And attempts are when students try to say something, but they don't know how to say it correctly because they've never heard it before. So they're kind of guessing at what it should be. So those are the different kinds of mistakes. Slips, they can correct themselves. Errors, they're going to need some help. And attempts that they're just guessing. Let me move this for you. The causes for these types of errors are two different main ones. You probably saw this in your linguistics classes with teacher Valeria. The first one is when there's L1 interference. So this means that the Spanish is interfering with their English. So this is when, for example, you guys tend to spell specially with an E, yeah? No, I'm sorry, the example's the other way around. Especially is a word in English, especially, that we use an E in it, but a lot of times you guys eliminate the E because you think that you're overusing the E in Spanish, or you write special with an E at the beginning. And this whole E and ES beginning sounds is an interference from your Spanish from L1. This is why you guys take Lengua Materna in first year, so that hopefully you recognize how Spanish is influencing your English grammar and vocabulary. The other type of errors are overgeneralization, which means just assuming, and unfortunately English doesn't work like this at all, that because one type of word works a certain way, all of them will. So this happens in the past simple, for example, when I say yesterday I goed. It's an overgeneralization, assuming that since a lot of verbs use ed in the past tense, all of them will, which is not the case with that verb, of course, which is went. Some different ways we can assess our students' work is through giving them comments, through giving them marks or grades, which is what we generally do, or by giving them actual reports. So assessing doesn't have to mean just a mark. There are lots of different ways to look at this. An example here, we can have students assess themselves through self-assessment. And here, these are just I can or I know statements, and the student has to say yes, they can or no, they can't. It's a really good idea to apply these type of self-assessment checklists just before a test or evaluation, so the students can recognize what they still need to study and how far along they are. And they don't just have to wait for the grade from you. Each of these I can and I know statements should be the objectives or the criteria that I'm going to be assessing in the test or activity that's to come. A way of giving feedback through comments is having a record of achievement. And here you could just simply have a page for each student. And if we're working on speaking, each time we have a speaking activity, I write down comments. And I have the student write comments as well. We paste them in my copybook. And so we have a record of the achievement of what the student thinks, how the student feels they did on their oral presentation, dialogue, whatever the assignment was, and what the teacher thinks. And we take a moment to look at those together and compare and see if our comments are similar or not. So that helps see if my self-evaluation is on track with what the teacher is saying. When we give feedback during oral work, there are two different things that we need to look at, either accuracy or fluency, which is something we've been talking about all semester, right? That when we deal with accuracy, we're talking about the specific details like pronunciation, intonation, their use of grammar, their word choice. We want them to get it right. And when we think about fluency, we're talking about their ability to keep going, their ability to communicate an idea, even if it's not grammatically correct. And the feedback we're going to give our students is going to depend upon if we want to give them feedback focusing on accuracy of their speech or their fluency. When we're focusing on accuracy, here are some examples. Let me move this for you again. Of ways that we could give feedback for accuracy. The first one is repeating. So when a student says something and you haven't understood, or you think that it's just a slip, that they can fix it on their own, remember we have the three kinds, then you can ask them to repeat. That's what repeat is. You can ask them. So if they say something, I'm going to keep going with the goat example. Yesterday I goat, you say, I'm sorry, can you say that again? And hopefully they'll take a moment there to reflect. We only want to use repeating if we think that the student does know how to correct it themselves. If we're sure they don't know it and it's an actual error, then repeating wouldn't be very helpful. Echoing then is when you help the students notice their own error. Again, you want to be sure that it's a slip and they know how to fix it. And so here, when the student says, yesterday I go, sorry about that, to the supermarket, you would say, you go, or she go, and hopefully they would hear that mistake and be able to correct it. So you echo back to them what they've said incorrectly. Another way to correct accuracy is through statements and questions. I think this is something we do pretty naturally, right? So the student says, yesterday I goed, and the teacher says, that's not quite right. Can you try it again? Or the teacher says, class, is that the way we say it? Careful with that class option. The book does mention it, but we also don't want to embarrass the student in front of the classmates. But that is a way that we check learning. Maybe if it's not a specific student that made that mistake, but we want to say something we heard while they were working out loud. And I say, while we were working today, class, I heard some people saying, yesterday I goed. Is that correct? And that would be a way to check it as well. Another way that we can check accuracy is just through our own expressions, our facial expressions or gestures with our hands. And if, for example, a simple raising of the eyebrows, yeah, so I say, yesterday I goed, and you say, right? Or you frown. Or you say, are you sure? Right? And just with a simple expression, kids can oftentimes correct themselves. Again, if they're slips, because then you're assuming they really do know it. Hinting is another possibility. This is meta language. Again, you should have seen this in linguistics with teacher Valeria. You might have seen it in Focus also with teacher Paz. And here, this meta language is language that we share, that if I give them like a hint or a keyword, they're going to know what I'm talking about. So when the student says, yesterday I goed, you say verb tense, and they think, or irregular in this case, right? Because it's not a tense mistake, but rather between regulars and irregulars. So when I say the word tense or I say irregular, then they realize the mistake that they've made, the slip that they've made, and they can correct it on their own. Reformulation is what we tend to overdo, where we just give them the answer, right? So the student says, yesterday I goed, and I say, yesterday I went, and they continue to say, oh yeah, yesterday I went to the... Maybe that would be the option to use when we realize it's an error and not a slip, and that they don't know how to correct it on their own. Here we have other strategies for feedback, but this is for fluency, right? If we're going to interrupt them, which generally we recommend that we don't interrupt them when their goal is communication, an option would be gentle correction. So again, the strategies we just saw, things like reformulation, but we want to make sure that it's not abrupt, it's gentle, it's not interrupting the flow of conversation. So I could gently say, yesterday I went. All right, yesterday I went, and we want to make sure that it's gentle, because with communication, the goal is that they feel comfortable with the English language. The prompt would just simply be to help them continue going. So when they say yesterday I, and they can't remember the irregular verb, then you could say went and help them to go along, or you could say irregular and use the meta language again, but kind of help them to continue with their conversation, give them the word that they need, the verb tense that they need, so they can continue communicating. Reformulation, I kind of mixed it in there, so we already talked about reformulation. Another option would be to simply record their mistakes. Don't stop them at all. As they're speaking with their oral presentation, their dialogue, whatever it is, you just simply record. An option that's in the text by Harmer, if you want to look at it, is just a chart that's divided between grammar, vocabulary, pronunciation, and the teacher takes notes as they're talking. Not for a grade, just so that later the teacher could show them that chart as evidence. And that comes to the last point here, which is afterwards, right? That in general, the feedback we want to give for fluency is afterwards. Let them finish speaking, let them finish the class activity, let them finish their oral presentation, their dialogue, whatever it is. Don't interrupt them, because the goal is to feel comfortable, to communicate, to get the idea across. And then I could give them some feedback that's really more based on their accuracy, right? But to help them to be better able to communicate and more fluent in the future. When we're thinking about written work, which is not what we're really focusing on today, but the options for written work are to, apart from just correcting everything, which is what we generally do, right? Not go, went, and I write it at the top. I can respond to writing as a way to focus on fluency again and them communicating their ideas. So if they write a letter, I respond to the letter. If they make an advertisement, I respond to that advertisement. And because if I can respond to whatever they wrote, then I show I understood and they were able to communicate. And the other option is coding, which is, I think you've probably seen these huge lists of symbols that your writing could be corrected with. Like, for example, SP means spelling, so you just circle a word and write SP. Or there are symbols to start a new paragraph, or we'll see this more in Practica 6 when we get to assessment and evaluation, but it's sometimes better to use coding instead of just correcting all of students' mistakes so that they can learn to correct their own mistakes. Circling a word and writing WC means word choice, but there are hundreds of different codes, so you need to decide which one works best for you, teach it to your students so they know what it means, and then be consistent. I hope this was helpful in terms of giving feedback. And we'll be practicing with this in class on Wednesday, so be sure to bring your notes. You choose the format.